everyone. I'm Mindy Tate, Executive Director for Franklin Tomorrow, and welcome to our sixth episode of our podcast, Front Porch Conversations. And if this guy looks familiar, he is. It's Franklin Mayor Ken Moore, who we're not on his front porch, but we're in a place he spends probably more time than you spend on your front porch, right?
Well, we're in my office, and the backdrop is some of the memorabilia that I've collected during my time in office. And so, welcome.
Well, and we appreciate you joining us. As you know, this podcast is available on our YouTube channel as well as on the Spotify through, you can find any of this episode or any of the past episodes of Front Porch Conversations. We're going to have about a 25-minute conversation with you and learn a little bit about the man behind the mayor.
Uh-oh. I better get ready.
You've seen some of the questions, but not all of them. But so you've been in Franklin how long?
Well, Linda and I moved here in 2004.
But that wasn't your first time in Franklin now, was it?
Oh, no. You know, my wife grew up in Franklin, and for years I heard what was so many fabulous stories about her growing up here and great experiences she had. So I was very, very familiar, and her parents were still living. Of course, they were here. But what a great place it was to grow up for her.
So who were her parents and what did they do?
Well, Hal and Naomi Crowell. Naomi was born here, and her father was the village blacksmith. He had a blacksmith shop that was over on, I guess that's First or Bridge Street, overlooking the river, and he had a number of people that worked for him. And they actually lived on First Avenue.
Okay.
And so Hal, he was from over Shelbyville direction, and I'm not quite sure how they met, but they married, and of course, had 4 children. One unfortunately passed away from leukemia back when leukemia was maybe not as treatable. And Linda went to Franklin Elementary, and she went to Franklin High School, and rode her horse all over Harlansdale and all over Franklin, actually, Cool Springs Mall. And then her grandparents on her dad's side lived out off Arno Road. And she and her cousin would get on their horses and ride out Arno Road and go visit the grandparents.
Wow. So you grew up, I hear you were born in East Tennessee, but you grew up in Nashville. Is that right?
I grew up kind of in the Donaldson area. My father was with the Tennessee Valley Authority, and so a lot of those early years in my life, we lived in a lot of different towns because they moved him around quite a bit. But we kind of settled for a period of time in Donaldson when I was in the 4th grade. So 4th grade to 12th grade, I spent in Donaldson. And about that time that I was finishing high school, my father was transferred to be head of personnel in Chattanooga for TVA. And so I was kind of in a dilemma because, just got out of high school, and what am I going to do? I knew what I was going to do in my life, but or at least I thought I did. And so I just started going to school. So I started going to college that summer and worked some, and then every summer thereafter I was in college and eventually in medical school. And of course, when you get in medical school, that's a full-time gig.
So how did you decide to become a doctor, and how did you choose orthopedics?
That's a good question, because I don't know whether, I'm not sure what inspired me to be a physician or a doctor. None of my family was in the medical field. I think it's just something that I was drawn to because I like to help people. And when I was about 10, I told my parents, I said, I want to be a doctor. And of course they were, oh yeah, that's a great idea. They just didn't know the cost of it. So that was always my focus, is to be a medical doctor. When I went to medical school, my vision, just because of some of my exposure from some of the people I met, I thought I'd be an obstetrician. Well, that didn't last too long. After I delivered a bunch of babies, I said, no, I don't think that's mine for life. And so that's when I kind of started trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I liked three different areas of surgery. I like plastic surgery. I like some of the challenges that it offered as far as reconstructions and not particularly cosmetic side, but just some of the delicate surgery they did. I like urology, which is so far away from orthopedics, but I like some of the things that you did and some of the techniques you had. And then, of course, orthopedics really was probably a better fit for me because I liked kind of the mechanics of things, you know, kind of the nut and bolt guy and the hammer and the chisel. And how do I, yeah, and how to, delicate stuff.
Yeah.
And so how do I refine that? I ended up saying, well, I like hand surgery. And so a lot of my focus when I was in training was eventually being a hand surgeon. You know, I did a lot of firsts in my careers along the way. I did the first total knee at the City of Memphis Hospital. Um, I did the first arthroscopy, and whenever I went into practice and in the community we were at, uh, and I did a lot of things that nobody had ever done in that particular area because of my training and so on. But hand surgery was really always my love, and I had partners that loved to sweat and chisel and pull and push, and I'd sit there. You have a little table when you do hand surgery, and the hands laid out there, and so it's kind of relaxed and to some degree.
To some degree, it sounds horrible, but
if you're on the receiving end, it's not that relaxing. But if you're on the giving end, I mean,
and someone who's had arthroscopic and carpal tunnel on both, and a broken elbow, and it's not relaxing to me. I don't think.
Well, thank goodness that you had orthopedic surgeons working on.
Very good orthopedic surgeons to work on me. So it sounds like I always thought that your practice was mainly in the city of Columbia, but But you were in other places when you were in medical school, and then as you started your career.
Well, I did my college at Tennessee Tech and went to the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, or UT Memphis, for my medical school, and then UT was kind of a different animal then, and so they had new classes every 6 months. So to get on cycle with certain residencies and internships, I wanted to get on the July cycle because I graduated actually on my birthday in December. So I went and worked in Knoxville for about 6 months before I started my internship in Memphis. And after I finished my internship, I wasn't certain what I wanted to do as far as medicine. And so I went in the Army for 2 years. And that was back during the Vietnam era. And doctors didn't have much choice other than you can go in now or you can go in after your residency or your specialty training.
And so, where were you when you were in the Army?
I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I drove over there with my pregnant wife at that time, and they said, well, go down there and get your uniform. And they said, and you report here tomorrow morning. And I said, well, I thought I was supposed to go to basic training. I said, we need you now. So I actually worked at Fort Bragg for 6 months before I even went to doctor basic training, and which was a fun experience. But I ended up being the surgeon for the Army Training Center. And that's back when all the recruits were coming through, and I was responsible for making sure that they were fit and making sure that ones that didn't need to be in the Army didn't stay in the Army, and certainly saw a lot of injuries and things related to that. And then my last year in the Army, when Vietnam was slowing down, I spent on a female ward, female internal medicine ward with a fully trained internist for a year. So that was a good experience. Then went back to Memphis and did some arthritis research and started my orthopedic residency at Campbell Clinic after I did a year of general surgery. Then went into practice with one of my medical school classmates.
In Middle Tennessee. It kind of felt like coming to Columbia?
Well, having grown up in Middle Tennessee, and my medical school classmate had grown up in the Nashville area, and he and I had a little different view of how we wanted to practice, and we both didn't want to be in the big city. So we looked around Middle Tennessee primarily for a town that needed orthopedics, and ended up in Columbia. And it was kind of a community that was ready to kind of uh, embrace specialty surgery like orthopedic surgery. And of course, it's history now. I mean, the hospital when we went there was small, and now it's a big, big hospital, and, with every discipline almost there.
Well, Columbia, a lot of people say Columbia is Franklin 10 or 15 years ago, but is that is that true in your experience and having now lived here for almost 20 years?
Well, I think things are happening in Columbia. You know, I saw a lot of change in Columbia. When I went there, everything was phosphate. You know, Monsanto, Stauffer, all these other companies, and their focus was phosphate mining and phosphate industry. And it was really sad because all those companies went out about the same time, and so a lot of people lost their job, uh, and that's when Saturn shortly thereafter announced, and of course that was a big boom for employment. Pretty good lesson. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket. You know, have a lot of different industries represented, like we do in Williamson County and Franklin. Many different industries, so you're not so prone to a downturn whenever something happens.
When you came to Franklin, did you think you'd be mayor of this town? Did you have any idea you'd be mayor of this town?
That was the furthest thing from my mind. You know, my experience when I was practicing, I had a lot to do with health policy and legislative issues that affected orthopedic surgery and Medicare issues, and I worked on the state and federal level. And my thought process was I liked that, and I thought, well, I think I'll go do a health policy fellowship for a year, and then I didn't know what would happen after that, and well, it didn't work out. So for a year, I played golf, which was a lot of fun. And for those that don't know, I like to play golf. But
yeah, I have that on here. Yeah, you do play golf.
Yeah, I do play golf, and so I figured out pretty quickly I didn't want to spend the rest of my life playing golf every day. And I got a phone call one day, and a doctor that was involved with orthopedics overseas, was from Nashville. He said, "You want to go to Bhutan and teach orthopedic surgery?" Well, my first question was not, "Do I want to do it?" I said, "Where is Bhutan?" uh, so I ended up doing that. I was gone for about 6 weeks in 2005, and had a great cultural experience, a great experience teaching eager minds about orthopedics. And so I said, "This is a pretty good gig. I think I'll do it again." So I talked to orthopedics overseas, and we came up with, they had a slot in Ethiopia in 2006. So I went to Ethiopia and taught orthopedics. I had 12 orthopedic residents
Wow.
that I dealt with, and that was a great experience because I got to experience a lot of different culture in Ethiopia. Got to teach orthopedic residents, and then the next year I was looking at going to Moldova, and I happened to be having breakfast with one of my close friends who I'd done a lot of political things with, and I don't know why he asked me that. He said, "You know, they're having an alderman race in Franklin. You ought to run." And after I finished chewing my sausage or bacon, I said, "Well, I think I will." Well, that was about the dumbest move in my life. I don't know if it's the dumbest move, but it was one that didn't get a lot of thought, actually. And so I was in a race for alderman at large, and there were 14 candidates. And so I really did a lot of learning on the run at that time. You know, I heard really a lot of smart people in that race, and they'd be talking about things, and I didn't know what they were talking about because I just hadn't been exposed to that element of the city. But I walked a lot of neighborhoods and ended up getting the most votes, and I was one of 4 aldermen at large elected that year. Now, I didn't expect to be mayor.
But you were elected vice mayor, and a lot of people don't know how that works here. In that the council elects the vice mayor, and the mayor runs in a separate election or on a different term. And so you were appointed the vice mayor, and lo and behold.
Well, whenever John Schroer, who was our mayor, who was doing a great job, I thought, that had to be Commissioner of Department of Transportation for the state. I walked into the mayor's slot, and we weren't but 9 months off from the next election, and I remember that there was a rush to ask me, was I going to run for alderman? And I thought that was unusual. I said, I'm not running for alderman, I'm running for mayor. So that was 3 elections ago. And so I ran in 2011 and I was successful in that race, and I've had 2 elections since and been successful in those. And as I'm looking at it down the road in 2023, I anticipate I'll do the same thing again, run for mayor.
Right. Is there a regular day or a routine day in the life of Ken Moore, the mayor of Franklin, or Ken Moore, the retired orthopedic surgeon? Is there a routine day?
Well, I think it's regularly irregular. I think that's the most consistent thing. I do like to get up and go to the gym to start my day.
Where do you go?
I go to the enrichment center right now, and I tell the guys that are there, I say, this is the best advice I get. Because they want to talk about certain things, and I tell them, I say, well, this is where I really get all my information. Of course, I get a lot of information from a lot of different people, from citizens and from my staff.
Do you think that people understand what the mayor does in Franklin? Because it is a different setting than maybe what they would see in another community like Nashville or even Murfreesboro. Your role as mayor in Franklin is different, correct?
I think it is different based on our charter, and basically our charter says that I'm not a full-time mayor, but in reality, with what's going on in our city, I am a full-time mayor. I think most people think that I run the city just like the mayor of Nashville runs Nashville. But I have a city manager that runs the city, that makes sure the day operations of the city are running efficiently. And my role is, some of it is prescribed, such as running the meetings and representing us at certain activities and so on. But also there's a lot of ability as far as mayor to kind of have a vision of what you want to do. I focused a lot on transportation. I focused on sustainability. I focused on the health in our community. Those are just a few of the initiatives. Unite Williamson, that's another one. I'm very heavily involved with a lot, even statewide. I'm currently slated to become president of Tennessee Municipal League on Tuesday of next week. I think that's the good thing about being mayor of the city of Franklin. In many ways, a mayor can create what his vision is for that job and how he leads the city forward.
And you don't vote unless there's a tie, right?
Oh, that's so entertaining. The board laughs at me every time I have to vote. And what's strange is 2 times it's been pretty significant issues, but there's also 2 times that it was a tie for vice mayor. So, I mean, if you can imagine me fumbling and mumbling about who I'm going to vote for, it works out.
So I know, and you mentioned you're a golfer, but we're trying to get to know Ken Moore, the man behind the mayor. So do you have other hobbies, or are there things that people would be surprised to know? I mean, you mentioned some of the first, but do you have other hobbies?
Well, first of all, I have to admit that I'm a member of Yard Work Anonymous. I told my wife a few years ago, I said, I'm done with yard work. So yard work and planting and digging is not in it. But a few years ago, I decided I wanted to learn to play the guitar. And so I took lessons for a while, and so I enjoy just kind of sitting around with the guitar and playing a few songs, and I'll sing along with them and sing to the wall, but not to people. I think probably the only people I've ever played my guitar and sang to were my grandchildren. One Christmas, they wanted to hear me.
So grandchildren, how many children and grandchildren do y'all have?
We have 5 children between us, and we have 6 grandchildren. Half of them are grown, and half of them are still in school. And then I have a great grandchild.
Wow, great.
So,
So any other things? Is there something that you think people would be surprised to know about Kenmore? Would they? I mean, I think sometimes it's like you're really a shy person, or you're a jokester, or I don't know. Is there something people would be surprised to know?
well, I'm a big Tennessee fan, and I think back about a few little pranks I've pulled in that regard. I had a partner that was a big Auburn fan. In fact, he was more of an Auburn fan than I was a Tennessee fan. He had the best new car, and he had the shiniest Auburn plate on the front of it. But every day when he came in, he'd walk around the backside of his car, never looked at the front of it. So he inspired me, and I bought the gaudiest UT plate that I could find and put it on the front of his car. Well, for a month, he'd get out of his car and walk around and come back in. And so finally one day, it just killed me. I said, and I won't mention his name, I said, would you go out and look at the front of your car? I think there's something wrong with it. Uh, I did get hit by a truck one time. Probably people don't know that. I was my first day of medical school, and one of my newly found friends and roommates there, he was from Memphis, and he knew Union Avenue, which is like a 8-lane road or something. And he says, "We're going over to the bar and have a beer, and we're going to figure out how to get you elected class president." So we jaywalked out to the middle of the road, and he says, "Let's go." And so I went, and boom, I got hit by a truck. And so fortunately, I had my books, my bone box, and I'm laying on the ground there, and I look up, and eventually, and there's a guy in a blue uniform there, and he's writing me a ticket for jaywalking. So I couldn't sit down for a month. But I won the class presidency.
Dedication.
That was, you just have to do what you got to do sometime to get elected.
So being elected mayor was not your first big election. That was being class president.
Well, I've always been blessed to have some leadership roles. I was, when I was in college, I was treasurer of the student body. And then in medical school, I was class president. And along the line, I've served as president of the Tennessee Orthopedic Society, the Tennessee Hand Society. I've been president of the Clinical Orthopedic Society, which is the second oldest orthopedic organization in America. And so now, rather than being orthopedic president, I'm headed into the mayor presidency.
So, is Linda a golfer? Or I know you all enjoy travel, but tell me, is she a golfer, or do you all look for other interests when you're traveling?
She encouraged me to play golf, but she tried golf for a little while and made the mistake of asking the golf pro, says, "How much do I have to play to be good?" And he said, "Oh, 2 or 3 times a week." She gave him the club back and never went back. Linda's very interested in making a home, and she loves to cook. She's loves animals. She's an animal advocate. She's very involved as far as supporting Harlansdale and getting things done at Harlansdale Farm. And she's just a good person. She's had a little side business in the past, but she's quit that.
So do you have a favorite place on earth?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one because we travel pretty extensively. But probably if I would have to say a place that I'd like to go back to would be Bhutan. And just because it was such a great cultural experience, and I got so much exposure to their national folks, the finance minister and the health minister, and just a whole array of people, in addition to my friend Cotto, who was a colonel in the military. He had royal blood, and his classmate was the king. And so his job was bodyguard to the princesses at that time. But I could tell you a lot of little tales about things that happened there that were so much fun.
Let's not get Kato in any trouble, okay?
Oh, this would not get caught in trouble. I didn't do anything like that.
So we're going to wrap up our conversation, but do you, now you, as you said, you're in your third term as mayor and you are looking ahead to possibly a fourth term, do you consider yet what your legacy is in Franklin?
Legacy is not a focus of mine, quite honestly. I've talked to my wife about it before. I said, whenever they name a bridge after somebody or put up a bust about somebody, it's not too long till people are saying, who was that? So I've never really focused on that. I think that I've been blessed to get inspired by a lot of things and get involved with them. And I'm still learning to be mayor, and I'm finding out what an important job it is every single day, but also the opportunities it creates to build a community and make our community better. And I think that's, if anybody said, what's your legacy, I would hope that they would say, well, Franklin's a better place to live because you were mayor.
Well, thanks so much for letting us get to know a little bit about you behind the scenes. Thank you for taking time to talk with us, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Front Porch Conversations, and we'll see you around town on a porch somewhere else.
Yeah, say hello to me whenever you come by.